Bruce Lee, who doesn't know him? Hong Kong's most famous son was not only the most influential martial artist of all time and a world-famous actor who revolutionized martial arts cinema, Lee was also a philosopher.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
The concept of being like water is central to Lee's life lessons. 50 years after his impressive life and work, we ask, why is the be water philosophy still so powerful? And how was it essential for Bruce Lee's success?
Be water means a number of different things. It can mean to be adaptable, to be flexible, to go with the flow, to be present. I think for me, the deepest meaning is one of formlessness, to try to be in collaboration with life rather than in opposition to life.
Shannon Lee was only 4 when her father died in 1973. She now promotes his teachings and wrote the book Be Water, My Friend, which explores Bruce Lee's philosophy.
My father had a very curious mind. He loved to learn. He loved to experiment. He loved to experience. And he was an avid reader and he was a writer. He wrote copious notes about his thoughts on martial arts, his thoughts on life.
While her dad was enrolled at the University of Washington in the early 1960s, he took some courses in philosophy. His own spiritual teachings incorporated elements from both Western and Eastern philosophy. In this 1965 TV interview, the 24-year-old Lee can be heard referencing a paradox that's originally attributed to the 5th century BC founder of Taoism.
Water is the softest substance in the world, but yet it can penetrate the hardest rock or anything, granite, you name it.
Nothing is softer or more flexible than water, yet nothing can resist it.
His quote of "be water" speaks really directly toward how to deal with an obstacle. You know, I think that he implemented that practice in life so that when he found himself hitting a wall, he could stand back for a moment and think, what is another way?
Be water is an idea as one very innovative, but also a continuation of Chinese traditional belief. I don't think he was thinking about it, because every time he talked about be water, he talked about, in terms of fighting. But I think having studied Bruce Lee's work, I think it's actually a continuation, a subliminal influence of Chinese traditional culture.
But let's rewind for a moment. Bruce Lee was born Lee Jun-fan in the Year of the Dragon of 1940 in San Francisco. When baby Bruce was just 3 months old, the Lee family moved to Hong Kong, where he was raised in Kowloon. In Hong Kong, he started playing roles as a child actor in locally made films.
Bruce Lee, The Orphan, the film The Orphan. I show this clip every time I do an introduction to Hong Kong cinema. He was actually a super actor when he was in Hong Kong during his childhood. I mean, the kid, I think, I put it in one of the 100 must-see Hong Kong movie lists.
This was also the time Lee famously started studying under Ip Man at age 13. The principles of the Wing Chun Grandmaster greatly influenced Lee's own fighting and philosophy.
Martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being, all these I have learned from martial art.
In his late teens, Lee had become a street fighter and troublemaker. He moved to the US and began teaching martial arts to make some money, eventually opening his own kung fu school. He taught a mix of Wing Chun and other fighting styles. He called his hybrid fighting technique Jeet Kune Do, meaning the way of the intercepting fist. Lee would philosophically say things like, approach Jeet Kune Do with the idea of mastering the will, forget about winning and losing. That's also when he started acting in American TV shows, most famously as Kato, sidekick to the Green Hornet. But in 1971, realizing that his opportunities in Hollywood were limited, Lee decided to change his home again. Together with his American wife Linda and their 2 children, Brandon and Shannon, he moved back to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is where he grew up. It's where he grew up with family. It's the city that was his environment, his home. It's where he learned to act. It's where he learned martial arts. It's where he became the cha-cha champion. It's the culture that he interacted with.
Back in Hong Kong, Lee made his martial arts film debut with The Big Boss. Lee created and performed all his own fighting scenes in the movie.
And it came out as a seismic explosion because everybody who saw it was greatly impacted by it. His acting, by conventional terms, is bad acting because it's so exaggerated. But nobody has acted like that before. And for example, his animalistic battle cry, "Ee, oh," who acts like that? There's no method acting to it. He has his own method. It's something totally original.
While Lee was working on a new film project, he died in Kowloon, Tong. He was only 32 years old. The official cause of his death was an allergic reaction to a painkiller. In the months before he died, Lee had reportedly suffered seizures and complained about headaches. Some 15,000 people lined the streets of Hong Kong for his funeral.
That is the day he passed, but to me, it's also the day that his legacy began.
6 days after he died, Enter the Dragon was released.
One of the greatest stars who ever lived in the film classic that made him an international legend.
His last film, Game of Death, was released in 1978, 5 years after he died. Filmed between August and October 1972, Lee was not only the star, he also directed, wrote and produced the film.
He became big with only 4.5 films and became a legend. The characters that Bruce Lee played are all unique. He is very pure, he's idealistic, he's dedicated, but there is also anger. I mean, I think one of the things that make Big Boss and especially Fist of Fury so powerful, first the Hong Kong audience, and then the audience of the Chinese diaspora, and then audience all over the world, especially in the developing world or in the ghettos of the West, is because that anger, the inequality, the unfairness, the injustice that he had encountered as a person. And this is something very consistent with all of his characters.
Lee's influence and wisdom extend far beyond the world of martial arts and popular culture. During the anti-government protests in Hong Kong in 2019 and 2020, for instance, protesters famously adopted his be water philosophy. Tech-savvy demonstrators took Lee's words to heart, to go with the flow, as they moved in unexpected waves, putting up spontaneous road blockades and moving around the city in a so to say formless protest. The Bruce Lee Foundation actively shares the art and philosophy of Lee through social initiatives and exhibits, like this one at the Hong Kong Heritage Museum. Their aim is for people to continue to engage with Lee's legacy and see a broader picture of the man he was.
Bruce Lee is not only a Kung Fu master, of course. Bruce Lee is also a person who loved art, literature, and poem.
Lee was well read and had a library dominated by books on martial arts and philosophy.
So his interest is really manifold. Hinduism, Buddhism, religions. He also read religious books.
Beyond books, his beliefs were refined by his intense personal experiences. It resulted in an eclectic philosophy that in some way mirrored his fighting belief that when one has no style, one can fit in with any style.
One of the things that my father said himself was that philosophy itself can be the disease for which it pretends to be the cure. And that means that it's great to be able to read a lot of books and get a lot of great ideas, but are you living them?
Lee is famously quoted as saying, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." In his own short life, he did just that. And half a century after his death, his spirit and philosophy live on as part of the fabric of Hong Kong and around the world.